Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
So do you remember when you were a kid? Do you remember that if there was a friend of the family or a cousin who was just a couple years older, you thought everything that they did was so cool. You thought, man, I'm going to be older in a year or two, and I'm going to be like that. I'll be listening to that music. I'll be doing those things. I'll be older kids, big kids. They're a big kid, and they're cool, and I want to be a big kid now. So you start to emulate, and you want to do stuff that they did to be more like them. Everybody does that. And I remember I had, well, it wasn't really a friend. In my mind, he was like my friend. In his mind, I was his mom's friend's annoying kid. Like, I don't remember what the age gap was at all, but I knew he was a few years older than me. My mom was friends with his mom, and so we'd end up at the house every once in a while, and like hanging out, talking. I don't know what it is that my mom and his mom talked about. I was just too concerned with what he had going on at his place, like all the different toys he had, all the different books he was reading, the comic books he had, the posters he had on his wall, the bands he was checking out, the music he was listening to. All of this I soaked up like a sponge, thinking that because he was just a couple of years older than me, it was the be-all of end-all of cool. And then he showed us something that he'd been working on for a little while. There was even music. He was like, Mom, can I show him? It was a little weird because whenever I came over, I was like, hey, man, how's it going? We going to hang out? We going to read comic books? We going to listen to music together? What's going on? We going to play? And he'd be like, oh, yeah, fine. Annoying kid that's in my space for a little while. I will tolerate you. But this one time when we came over, this kid, Jason, he was like, Mom, can I show him? And she's like, oh, yeah, he wants to do this thing. It just take like 5 minutes tops to just, humor him. I remember her leaning to my mom and saying that. And I was like, wow, he's stoked that I'm here. This is great. And what he was stoked for was a captive audience. And it was very theatrical. He had a boombox. He hit play on some really overly dramatic music. Then came out from his bedroom in a flourish, wearing a cape and a top hat with a magic wand. And the moment the first cymbal crash of that music hit, the wand turned into, I can't even remember what the hell it turned into, a handkerchief or something like that. He'd studied magic. He'd learned how to do magic. And I was like, whoa! Because I'm a little kid. And he just performed magic in front of my freaking eyes. Right there. And as cool as I thought this kid was, the fact that he pulled off a magic trick, several, he had a whole routine. I just remember the first one where he came out and the wand turned into the handkerchief or whatever the hell it turned into. And I was just out of my mind going, this kid was cool before, now it's on a whole other level because he can do magic. And I begged my mom. I was like, please, Mom, I want to be like Jason. I want to learn how to do magic. I want to learn how to do magic. Please. And so finally, I think my mom talked to his mom and was like, all right, how did he learn how to do that? And he got a magic kit. They sell them, I guess, but he got a magic kit, and my mom was like, you can get a magic kit. So I got a magic kit, and it didn't have like the top hat and the cape and all the bells and whistles that Jason's had, but it had some stuff, and then it had the guide with the trick. And I remember sitting there with a coin, learning how to palm it, reading the instructions. And it was basically, hey, you're going to wave over here or wave your hand over the thing. And what that is, that's misdirection. And while you're misdirecting people by waving around, you are going to palm the coin. And that's going to make it seem like it disappeared or it appeared from somewhere. I don't remember. All I do remember is like reading it. I'm like, wait a second. You're making somebody look at something different so you can sneak something. That's not magic. It was so unmagical. And what was interesting was I lost not respect, because I still thought he was a cool kid, but I lost admiration for Jason. He was no longer the be-all, end-all epitome of everything that I wanted to be in the world. And I also became, in a period of one afternoon, trying to learn how to palm a coin with a little guide on how to do magic, and completely disillusioned with magic. And I'm like, wait a second, I'm just saying some magic words and then waving my hand over here and then just doing something sneaky. That's not magical at all. That's like how I get candy when my mom's not looking. Oh, Mom, is the mailman here? Is that what that is? Scarf, scarf, scarf. No, the mailman wasn't here. Oh, what a surprise. Well, I'm going up to my room to read. It became so unmagical, but there's something very important that I learned about misdirection in that lesson.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So, this kid, who I was so enthralled by, a big kid, he had this otherworldly record collection. He had different posters on his wall. He knew stuff that I didn't know about, and he could do magic, which I thought was amazing because I was really young at the time. I don't know, 5, 6, I did something like that. But the idea that this kid could perform magic blew my mind. So I pestered my mom for this magic kit, got it. And then in the space of an afternoon, I became way less impressed by all of the above because I learned that this wasn't magic. It was a magic trick. It was a trick. It was essentially just being sneaky. And I flipped through this book of magic tricks and I was like, all this is like, hey, look over here so you don't notice what I'm doing here. And then the mechanics of it, like the sleight of hand, I guess. I have tremendous respect for people that can do this because I got nowhere with it. I was like, I don't know what I was expecting, but this isn't magic. Learning how magic is done makes it distinctly unmagical. So I lost interest in that pretty quick. But I do remember the idea of misdirection that I learned from that. And like I said, sometimes I used it to scarf candy or an extra piece of pie or something. Like my mom raised me like no sugar, no artificial colors, no artificial flavors, no E-numbers in anything, no fun, no television, no. And to this day, like I love my mom and there's so many things about the way she raised me that I value and treasure. But when it comes to denying me sugar, candy, chocolate, and television, I don't think that worked out too well because to this day, I'll still be eating Jolly Ranchers in front of the TV after having watched for like 3 hours straight, drinking a soda, going, I can do whatever I want now, Mom. I'm a big kid. In my mind, somewhere in the sick, dark, twisted, highly immature recesses of my brain, I still feel like I'm pretty cool for drinking soda, eating candy, and watching TV. So that one backfired. So I did learn how to misdirect. I did learn how to go, hey, Mom, there's something going on over here. I'm going to do something I shouldn't. That was an interesting one. And then I'll never forget. Could you Ren does when he goes to the baseball game and Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Do you remember that? The water dripping sound? Here, let's see if I can still do it. I was an expert in school. Pretty cool, right, Funkhauser? Can you do that?
Whoa. No, I can't do that. Mm-mm.
Yeah. You tap the side of your... I don't know. I just watched Ferris Bueller and mimicked what he did. And I was just like, I had red marks on my cheek because no sound was coming out. And eventually I got it right through hook or by crook or by luck. But anyways, 6th grade rolls around and I'm in science class, absent-mindedly doing that. And... we're supposed to be reading silently, and it was just sort of a nervous habit. I was like, I see the teacher get up. I was like, oh, I'm busted. Goes over to the sink, starts tightening the faucet, because it was a science lab. We had sinks in there. And I was like, oh, my God, this is too good. This might be the greatest moment of my young life. I did this, and he thought it was the sink dripping. This is awesome. I kept it up for the rest of the class period. And for the next 45 minutes, which was supposed to be silent reading time, I watched him go around the classroom and try and tighten every last faucet. It was great. Now that was some magic. And I remember once, like, man, gum was expressly forbidden in school. Oh, but I had a way of kind of sneaking it. Like, to this day, I chew gum all the time. I must chew gum. I'm chewing gum right now, which is wildly unprofessional to be doing whilst you're on the radio. But if you've come to look for a highly tuned and professional show around here, you clearly haven't been listening for very long. But nevertheless, I was a big gum chewer then. I'm a big gum chewer now. And I remember I'd eaten lunch and I had to go to that science class. And again, we're in some sort of like silent reading thing. And I think it was like the cardboard covered in cheese and ketchup that they passed off as pizza at school on given days, but I had a viciously awful taste in my mouth, and I wanted to put some gum. And I noticed, I was like, "Oh, he's looking. He'll see." Like, opening up this fresh pack of gum is kind of a thing, and he'll notice, and I'll get in trouble. And I'm already in trouble all the time, and I don't really need that. But I really had this rotten taste in my mouth. I was like, "Wait, hold on, wait." Science teacher gets up, goes over to the sink at the other side of the room, facing away from me for a second. Bazinga, quick as a flash, open the pack of gum, put a piece in my mouth, feel great. And I was like, whoa, I can misdirect someone and then do stuff that I want to do, just like when I was a kid, telling my mom that I thought I heard the doorbell ring. This is great. So, magic being distinctly unmagical, it may be, like I said, less interest in magic because it's more of a trick than anything else. There's no actual magic involved, and that's disappointing. But I did learn something very, very important about getting the things that you want through misdirection, which is horrible, and it's not really a technique that I've employed. I came to realize about the 7th or 8th grade that hard work and discipline were what motivated me. Not even close. The Double Live AC/DC album, the Beastie Boys, are what motivated me. But you know what you can't do through misdirection? Get better at playing music. So in that way, I discovered hard work and discipline by practicing like drums and all of the above instruments for like 8 hours a day because I was going to go to music school, and it all got derailed when I wound up in a band instead. But, you know, there was no substitute for hard work and patience when it came to being good at playing whatever the hell instrument it was that you're interested in playing. So from there on in, I sort of lost interest in the idea of misdirection. However, while you, me, all of us might believe in rolling up our sleeves, doing a good job, accomplishing, working harder than the person sitting next to you and getting through life, making your way in this world that way. You know who hasn't lost sight of the value of misdirection? Our elected officials. Yeah. Do you know about some of the president's latest tweets? I'm going to guess that you do. Have you been obsessed with Russian interference in the election? Have you been watching the trials as they unfold? Have you been quoting pieces of Comey's testimony to your friends around the office place? I'm sure if you're like most people I know, you have. But while all that's been going on over the last week, we've been misdirected from what a bunch of politicians are really doing.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radioland. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on, come on.
By the way, before we get into the sneaky, underhanded move that was pulled on pretty much the entirety of America while we're busy obsessing on Russian interference in the election and Comey's testimony and all of the above, before we get into all of that, I wanted to take a moment to say belated Happy Father's Day to you if you're a dad, and a belated Happy Father's Day to everybody's dad that gave them life in this earth, or on this earth, rather. I hope you had an awesome one. I hope that you were surrounded by friends and family and loved ones and all the people that matter to you the most if you're a dad, and I hope that you got everything that you wanted. Congratulations. And congratulations on raising fine, upstanding young individuals and sending them off into the world. As Dana Carvey points out, it's a very different game now than it was back in the day.
Dads today are different. You might have noticed. Parents are different. We're more involved. We're more touchy-feely. We're more their friends. I grew up in the 60s. My dad was an ex-Marine. He wasn't your friend. Move your butt out of the damn car now. Right? Today's dad at the park, you've seen him with the toddler. Gregers, what did we agree to? Let's use our inside voices. What happened to shut the up? Oh, man, I'll give you something to cry about. That was my dad. Now it's like, Gregers, I feel your owie. I wish I had a boo-boo, too.
And then you get a little older and you start talking about more adult things with your pops, like sports, but occasionally it can be kind of hard to keep up.
I love sports. My father taught me to love sports, and even though he's in Indiana and I'm in New York, when a big game's on TV, he calls me up all excited. Well, it's the 9th inning here. What is it, the 3rd inning there, huh? It's the NBA here. What is it, the NHL there, huh? My father listens to those all-sports radio shows they have, and no matter how easy the trivia question is, he never gets it right. I mean, the easiest question. This former Yankee, known as the Sultan of SWAT, once hit 60 homers in a season and had a chocolate bar named after him. Was it Candy Maldonado?
Belated Happy Father's Day. You do anything nice with your pops, Funkhauser?
Oh, yeah. We were all weekend in the garden, growing vegetables.
That's
doing some
harvesting. That's a different way to celebrate Father's Day. In a horticultural sort of way, you celebrated the the dad in your life. Good for you. That's interesting and different.
So we'll find out in 60 to 80 days whether or not we're successful.
Oh, right. So this was the planting process. You weren't harvesting the fruits of your labors. Literally the fruits of your labors. Not metaphorical fruit, the actual fruit. What did you plant?
Oh, we planted habanero peppers. Let's see. What else did we do? Tomato, a lot of aloe, some flowers, some milkweed. Silkweed.
Butter lettuce?
Oh, we have that going, man. Oh, yeah.
I never knew what butter lettuce was until you said you had it growing in your garden. And then, like, on a menu at some restaurant, they were like, this, backyard grilled steak comes over a bed of butter lettuce. I'm like, oh, I'm game. I'll try that. It's, like, the most delicious lettuce ever. Like, I don't think there's, like, a ton of nutritional value in it.
Has anything named butter something, anything let you down?
Yeah, and you know what? If I'm ever going to eat something and it starts with the word butter cookie, butter lettuce, butter ball, I don't know. Like, I have high hopes for any food that starts with the word butter. So you make a valid point. Good job. So this is what happened. Do you remember like 2008 or so when literally everybody lost everything? Do you remember that? Maybe you were one of the people that lost everything. We got plunged into a recession that many people call a depression. It was one of the largest financial crises of modern history. People lost their houses, people lost their homes, people lost their jobs. And a big part of it came from, well, one of two things. Look, there's a chicken and the egg situation with this. Now, people that are free market capitalists, of which I am one, will tell you, hey, you know what? That's on you. That's on you. The country got into a place where it all had to collapse because everybody was buying stuff that they had no right to be buying, no business to be buying, stuff they couldn't afford. Friends I knew that were making the same money as me, that were driving around in really expensive cars and living in nice houses. I was like, and I was just too, I was just too young and too stupid to really know how to take advantage of it. I hadn't been following it. And also, I've never been one to keep up with the Joneses. So whenever I saw somebody driving a really nice car, living in a really nice house, I was like, gosh, they must be doing better than me because my bank account says I can't afford anything even close to that. Oh, well, one day, maybe I'll get there. Had I known it was possible to buy a house for nothing or a car for nothing and just be like, the bills will come down the pike. Yeah, interest-only loan, no problem. Well, you're going to buy the house, but you're never actually going to pay for the house. You're just going to pay off the interest, and that'll be, there's nothing. Yeah, well, what about the part where you're trying to buy the house? Well, that's a someday question. And don't you want to live in this house today, not someday? Yeah. Dive in. Get the life that you've wanted and been waiting for. Live in this house and pay almost nothing for it. That sounds a little too good to be true. It does, doesn't it? But it is true. People driving around in expensive cars, people living in expensive houses that they really had no business driving or living in. Then eventually, it all collapsed. And it collapsed the country into fiscal ruin. What was the expression at the time? Survival is the new success. If you still had a job, if you managed to keep your house, that was really something. All these people way upside down, paying off loans that were hundreds of thousands of dollars more than the house was worth. Now, if you managed to hold on to that house, say you moved out of it, say you started renting it, right around now is when the market has sort of corrected itself. A lot of people sold in like 2005. A lot of people who bought in like 2005, 2006 wound up selling. Wound up selling in 2009 or foreclosing in 2009, taking huge losses because they were upside down on these homes. And the ones who managed to figure out a way to hold on, the ones who managed to figure out a way to either continue to live in their home or maybe rent it out and have the note paid down by someone else as they cut back in other areas of their lives. Those are the people that are just now, like 10 years later, 9 years later, able to sort of breathe a sigh of relief because the market has rebounded is a strong word. When it takes 9 years, it's not really rebounding. It's sort of gotten back to where maybe it should be. And there's a lot of people that say, look, it's the fault of Americans for trying to buy and own things that they've got no right to try and be owning. That is why the economy collapsed on itself, because of your greed, you, the American people. And then there's a lot of people that say, hey, this had to do with unscrupulous, predatory lending. This was absolutely the fault of the banks. And while I believe in the free market economy and I believe in personal responsibility, let's be real here. If banks were profiting off of lack of fiscal education, lack of an ability to know where you're truly at financially, if banks were profiting off of borrower ignorance and it caused the economy to crash in flames, well, it happened once. All right. Is that the fault of the banks or is that the fault of the American people? We know it happened. We know how it happened now. But just when we start to get back on our feet, when we as a country are finally going, oh gosh, okay, I've been renting out my home since 2008 when the market crashed. It's 2017 now. I can sell it off this year and be back to zero. Maybe even make a little bit of money on it. Had to cut back, had to sacrifice, didn't know, hung on by the skin of my teeth, didn't declare bankruptcy, did not foreclose, managed to make it work. And all of a sudden, taking advantage of the misdirection provided by Donald Trump's latest tweet, collusion with Russians, interference in the election, banks did something in sort of a down-lowy type way this past week, just gone by. Did you see this? Now, look, I'm not coming out for or against this sort of stuff. Like I said, essentially, I am a free market capitalist. I believe in smarts and common sense and hard work winning the day. I believe in allowing people a chance to be entrepreneurs through deregulation. But I also believe in us as a nation learning from our mistakes. And this whole thing of having a president where it's like, I didn't have to take money from special interest group. I just used the power of the internet. And everyone went, yay, Donald Trump got elected. This means that it's no longer money that wins elections. Well, maybe not in his case. That was more a cult of personality that got him where he needed to go. He didn't have to buy the advertising because every last word that came out of his mouth was sensationalized around the globe in a matter of seconds. Which, hey, look, I find to be an encouraging thing. One of the massive downfalls of our system is the idea of campaign finance through special interest groups. But while we might have a president who set a bit of a precedent by not spending a whole lot of donor campaign money on buying advertising, let's be clear on this. Congress is still essentially owned by Wall Street. And this thing that was put into place in 2010 to stop this historically huge economic collapse from happening again after the subprime mortgage crisis. Dodd-Frank, do you remember that? Well, this past week just gone by, members of the House voted to start slowly neutering parts of Dodd-Frank, taking out regulations. Dodd-Frank, this was a safeguard. Like I said, you could blame the American people for thinking they had a right to be buying something they had no right to be buying and not exercising common sense and fiscal literacy and all the above. Yeah. You could blame predatory lending from the banks. But Dodd-Frank, love it or loathe it, was passed to stop loans like this that tanked our economy from happening again. It was put in place. And I'm not saying I agree with every letter of it, but it was put in place to stop another fiscal collapse through irresponsibility, rather than whether it was the irresponsibility of the bank or the irresponsibility of you, me, the American person. Essentially gambling. And we all remember the crash of 2008. Now, there are all sorts of safeguards in Dodd-Frank that are supposed to protect your money. I'll never forget feeling like, what the hell is going on? Here I am in the middle. Here I am having made, and I'm sure you've probably felt this way too. If you're one of the people that wasn't living outside your means, if you were one of the people that was trying to live beneath your means, trying to be a little bit more conservative with your personal stash of cash. When you saw the flip side of this crisis, and when you saw who benefited off of the back of your blood, sweat, and tears, well, I'm going to go on a limb and guess that you, like me, were highly unamused.
You're waiting to get washed away.
Now, more AD on the radio.
So do you remember the financial crash of 2008? Of course you do. Absolutely. Of course you do. You 100%. It was a massive and historic event, and if you weren't personally affected by it, then you are one of the exceptions as opposed to the rule. Survival became the new success after 2008. And if you are like me, it really kind of made you go, wait, hold on just a cotton picking minute, okay? Hold on. You're telling me that here I am going, I can't afford that. I cannot afford that, so I'm not going to be buying it. I can't afford that car, and I can't afford that house. Therefore, I am not buying it. This is what I said. I was really too naive to know about what was going on in terms of predatory lending. I didn't know how people were getting approved for loans to buy cars and houses that, like I said, they had no business being in, but they were. I just assumed they were making way more money than me. But when the pigeons or chickens or whatever fowl you want to use in this analogy came home to roost, and you saw what was happening, you went, hold on, I've been here living a distinctly unshiny, sparkly life because that's what I can afford. Meanwhile, people buying too much, things that they can't afford. This is causing the economy to crash. Okay, got it. Well, I'm glad I didn't own a home to lose. That's good. I guess that's okay. And I guess I'm on the right side of history of this one. Everything. Oh, wait a second. I'm in danger of losing my job. Oh, wow. And I remember I did lose my job. I was part of something that was consolidated. Like a bunch of radio stations got mashed together and a bunch of people got let go. And I was one of them. And I was like, that sucked. I was just there diligently and responsibly living my life, generating what little income I could and spending it wisely and not getting in over my head. I didn't really have debt. I really didn't have, and the country is in a hole because of like my friends that have big houses with swimming pools and drive nights go, what the hell? Well, that kind of sucks. And then magically I rebounded. I got a job back. Had to start way further down the ladder. I went from being like the morning guy to the overnight guy at this one station. But I was like, hey, at least I'm still up in the game. Now, what about all these other folks? Like, everyone's losing everything. Like, I had this one cousin, not really a cousin of a girl that I was with who was a junkie. He was a junkie. He was a drug addict, but he also had purchased a home. He was one of those middle-class junkies. Wasn't really talked about, had a job, not living on the street, not doing like wife, kid, home. But a home that I was like, how on earth I don't think he makes that much. Wow. His line of work must pay way better than I thought, because that's an amount of money that I could never even conceive of ever spending on anything. And there he was, living in that home. Until it all went badly downhill. And then the banks, the financial institution, the fiscal backbone of America, they started to fail. They started to bail out. Everything was going horrifically wrong for them. And I'm going, whew. My austere existence seems to be paying off for once. Because, I don't want to be in the situation where I'm like a gazillionaire banker that all of a sudden runs out of everything and is jumping out of his 50th story penthouse with a box of files because the end is near. That doesn't sound like good times. And then I also don't want to be my junkie cousin that got in over his head. Oof. But then what happened? And you must have seen stuff like this happen to people you knew. Somehow, I don't know how, but the cousin guy gets bailed out, gets to stay in his home. Somehow he managed to keep his home, and I don't know. There was some sort of program put in place. There was some sort of like bailout. Bailout is exactly what happened. There was a bailout. There was a bailout of wildly irresponsible dudes like that. And then what happened with the banks? Well, the banks got bailed out. And there I am going, well, what's bailing this out? Well, the government, made some concessions, stimulus packages. And I remember going, here I am, living by the rules, just trying to make my way in the world. And you're telling me that taxes taken out of my paycheck every single week, every single month, my blood, sweat, and tears, your blood, sweat, and tears, is going to keep bankers in their penthouse offices with their trips at the end of the fiscal year, at which they receive bonuses en masse. Remember that when the financial institutions got bailed out and bonused themselves? Yeah, we did a really great job this year at completely destroying the American economy. Let's give ourselves a bonus with the American taxpayers' money. What the hell? And meanwhile, literally the poster child of American irresponsibility, homeboy over there, the cousin, gets to keep it all. Somehow lives in his incredibly too expensive to afford house. And it all kind of hangs together. Got incredibly lucky. And, I was happy for him at the time because, look, guy had a wife, guy had a kid. I didn't want to see him out on the street. Not that he would have been out on the street. He would have had family that he could live with and all of the above. But I still went, here I am. Here I am. And I know you felt this way too. Here you are, stuck in the middle. Gazillionaires and losers both get bailed out. And here we are, stuck in the middle like suckers, given handouts. Not a real happy feeling to have. And after the fiscal crash, after Dodd-Frank came in right around 2010, and after we all went, oh my gosh, we're finally starting to get through it. We are finally starting to, the ship is beginning to right itself. There's hope over the horizon. President Trump, whether you love him or hate him, is all about creating jobs and might be creating jobs. And that there's that. And then, oh, wait a second. What the hell did you just do, Banks? What did you just do? They just did it last week. And it just shows that we've learned nothing at all from history. Nothing.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KPRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The dumbing up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
So we really have learned absolutely zip, zing, nada, nothing. Our attentions have been misdirected from the source of that which caused us the most stress over the last 10 years. We're paying attention to Comey and his testimony. We're paying attention to Donald Trump's latest tweet. We are not paying attention to the dismantling of Dodd-Frank. And I'm not saying I'm a huge Dodd-Frank proponent. I would strive to get things deregulated more often than not. And whether you want to lay the finger of blame on the American people or whether you want to lay the finger of blame on the American banks, the crisis happened. And I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that as history rewrites itself, as we forget what happened, as we turn a blind eye to the source of the largest amount of pain that we have, as a nation, have been in years and years and years. The source of Americans fighting for survival every single day. We're letting it happen again right under our noses and doing nothing about it. So this is, like I said, this is what's happening in a nutshell. Wall Street owns Congress. They just do. This is the thing. And members of the House voted to effectively neuter Dodd-Frank this past week, just gone by. Dodd-Frank was, of course, passed to protect our economy against the recklessness of, take your pick, the American people or American banking. The economy crashed in 2008. Everything went badly downhill. Survival became the new success. And then there's this new bill that gets into a lot of the things that were put in place to protect your money as it goes into the bank. Why? How is this even possible? How are people even agreeing to this? Why? Well, over the last couple of years, banking institutions have donated $25 million to members of Congress. There you go. Now, this begs the highly obvious question. Congress, the government, your employees, people that suckle off the blistered teat of your tax-paying dollar. These people that work for you are really working for someone else. They're working for the banks. Now, there's going to be people that say, hey, D, how could you be a fan of free market capitalism? How can you be a fan of free market capitalism and, have a problem with deregulation of something like this? Well, how could you be warning us against the freedom that's coming for Dodd-Frank? Now, here's the thing. A lot of people would say this could mean growth. This could deserve support. Banking regulations have gotten crazy, like doubled, tripled maybe even, since 2010 when Dodd-Frank came in. Over 30,000 new restrictions. And what has this meant? These restrictions, and this is what a free market capitalist like myself would tell you, smaller banks, credit unions, couldn't survive. It's bad for the little guy when things are restricted. It's good for big business, a lot of people would say. Bad for the little guy. That entrepreneurial spirit of which America was built upon, or on which America was built, Regulations are the killer of that sort of thing. Makes it too hard for anyone other than the big boys and girls to operate. So, what have we seen over the last couple of years? We've seen credit unions, banks, they've been swallowed up by larger companies, bigger financial institutions, so that they can pay the cost of compliance. But here's the thing. This is the blueprint for dismantling Dodd-Frank. Banks are now required to have more of a financial pad. They're allowed. The idea is that we're going to take away some of these restrictions, and people are going to be able to start buying homes and cars, and the interest rates are going up. People won't be able to buy homes anymore. We want to keep people buying homes, so let's get rid of these restrictions. And that $25 million that we gave you over the last couple of years, we just want to help the American people get into the home that they deserve. Whoa! Do we not remember anything? Well, yeah, but it's different now. It's different because there's this thing that makes it necessary for banks to have more of a slush fund, more of a financial padding. This is where it gets sticky. And I know this sounds a little bit like homework, but I'm trying to let you know that the sense of terror and the sense of, oh my God, are we going to survive? The sense of, will I ever be able to make anything of myself? Will my children ever be able to make anything of themselves? That we all experienced in 2008, 2009. That's right there on the horizon again. Because even though these banks are required to have more of a slush fund, more capital in this new dismantling of Dodd-Frank, there's a problem. You're required to have more money so we don't get into this sort of problem again. But as it stands right now, there's no penalty for banks that violate. So it's really more of a suggestion. Now, if you get into all this, It's not easy to comprehend. It requires research and thought and free will and use of that free will to come up with an opinion about what is going on. Banks were proven to be devil may care with their attitude toward money during the financial crisis, because when they got bailed out, they paid themselves massive bonuses. On the other hand, interest rates are going up. Looks like the economy might be headed up. Time to loosen the reins a little bit. Time to move forward, having learned some of the lessons that we've learned over the last 8 or 9 years, and get things crack-a-lacking. And that would be fine. If we, not just as Americans, not just as a people, but if we, human beings, as a species, did not have such a consistent history of forgetting what happens with boom and bust. Now, politicians, they're counting on you, me, all of us being distracted by the circus, the media circus, the political circus, all of the above, to really kind of dig into this. A lot of people haven't heard too much about this. A lot of people aren't talking about this, but we are. Why? Because I care about you and because I want you to be okay. So this bill may pass. It may. Wall Street will continue to own Congress until further notice. Our tax dollars will essentially go a lot of different places that we don't like to think of them going. This thing is rolled through the House. Senate still may be able to smack it down. And if you think that's a good idea, and please do your own independent research on this, because I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm saying we are playing into the hands of fate and playing into the hands of history all over again. Now, I'm no fiscal freaking wizard, but I will tell you this. You know who benefited from the fiscal collapse of 2008? Me. Felt kind of lousy about doing it, but I did. I'd never owned anything up to that point because I couldn't afford to own anything up to that point. The idea of a mortgage on a home that costs that much, I can't keep up with that. What if I can't make the payment? I'll lose my home. I'll lose everything. I'll lose all the money that's in it. I understood what it was to be foreclosed on. And I didn't have a very sophisticated financial strategy when I did this. But I did go, hey, all these houses that were like just unthinkably expensive, like literally last year, they're like super cheap now. There's like a bunch of them. They're all foreclosed. What's that cost? What's the mortgage payment on that? Oh yeah, I could actually afford that. That's right in my budget. I could do that. And just like that, I had my first home. I moved into a place that got foreclosed upon. I moved into a home where the borrower was immediately upside down. I can't remember how much they bought it for, but I think I bought it for about less than half the price. So they let it go. Their loss was my gain. And I lived in it for a couple of years. And I sold it at a profit. And next time, the sarcastic air quotes around this word, next time my career went wacky, the profit that I made off of selling that home was what sustained me for a little while. So like I said, I benefited off of this. And look, you might believe that deregulation is the way to go, that it should be easier to get a loan, that you should be able to afford a home. That American dream, a house, chicken in a pot, little yard with a picket fence. The American dream is now renting. And that's a shame. It really is. So, if these deregulations that come in as they start to neuter Dodd-Frank happen, it might allow you to get something that maybe you do deserve, maybe you can't afford. for a while. Banks got this big slush fund, this big government bailout, which is basically, when they say government bailout, that's a bailout from you and me. That's money out of our pocket. That's our hard work. That's the taxes taken out. That's our tax dollars going to bail out banks. But what'd they do? Did they let people start buying homes again? No, they did not, for the most part. People were going, okay, you got the big bailout check. What do you, now we would like to buy a home again. It's now down to a price that I can afford. This home is $175,000, and I can make the mortgage payment on that. That's like, what is that? That's like $750. I can do this. Yeah, totally. And the bank went, no. That place is only worth $150,000. And we're going to sit on that money. No home for you. My point is, it's messy. It's not simple. You don't know where all of this is headed. So please keep your eyes and ears open and be aware. You might think this bill is a great idea. You might think it's a horrible idea. But the point I make, as I always make, is that when it's time to make these decisions about your life, where it's going, what you can afford, what you can buy, it comes down to you.